there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Ruth Tomlin, one of our teachers here at the team, and that's Nathan, our founder of LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. So today we have an email here from Pedro.
All right. Email says, "Hello, Ben and Nathan. I have a question for you, and I will ask it through a hypothetical. Suppose student A has both a very high GPA and LSAT. Student A applies and gets accepted to Harvard and Chicago Law School. Obviously, more schools should be included. Parentheses, apply broadly. That's one of our policies here at LSAT Demon. And I'm looking forward to hearing, Ruth, whether you applied broadly since you're headed off to law school this fall. But for the sake of my question, let's focus on these two. Fortunately, Chicago Law School will be giving student A a full ride scholarship. Harvard, on the other hand, will not be giving any scholarships to student A. Here is my question. Should student A turn down Harvard and go to Chicago? Suppose location is not a deciding factor here, and student A is happy to study law at either Chicago or in Cambridge, given that both law schools are prestigious. Is the $200,000 debt for a law degree from Harvard worth it? If so, students, if they get accepted to schools such as Harvard or Yale, should they immediately accept and ignore all offers from other law schools? If not, if a full ride is worth it, then what is the point of applying to Harvard or Yale? What do you think? Many thanks, Pedro. Well, Ruth, you just told me that you're headed off to Yale this fall.
Yes, and I was also contemplating actually some full rides. So this is, in my case, maybe not so much of a hypothetical. I will say, though, that Pedro has made this, I think, a bit more of an either or than it often is in most cases, right? So it is true that some students who apply to a place like Harvard or Yale know that they won't be eligible for any financial aid. But I think most people, or at least the median student, tends to be eligible for at least some money, given the need-based program. So that is one initial difference.
Yeah, Pedro seems to, and maybe he comes from money or something.
Sure.
And so he just knows, well, yeah, I'm not going to get any of that need-based aid. He does seem to be setting up like this, you might even call it a false dichotomy here, right? Where it's just like, well, it's all or nothing. It's either like Chicago for free or Harvard. What do you think about that? Harvard at full price. What do you think about that?
Exactly. And so it is true that there are some people, and I've met people who say, look, I know exactly what I want to do. I want to work in the public interest. And even though I'm a highly qualified student, I will not be applying to these types of need-based only schools, right? Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, because I'm in it for a full ride or nothing. And that is a choice that some people, even the people, right, with those 175 plus top of the line GPAs might make. But it's not everyone's decision. And I think for that reason, going into the cycle, you need to have a bit of an idea of what it is that you want to do with your degree. And that will help guide you to think for whether these Harvards or Yales might be worth it in any particular instance. So to the question of if 200 grand of debt is worth it, I think the only correct answer is it depends.
Yeah.
Some people, I think, will find that it's worth it to them if they have a very targeted view of the type of job that they want, and if they feel like the connections of these kinds of schools is going to help them. But I'll also point out that at this point in time, what is considered sticker is probably honestly going to be pushing more into 300. And so that's something to also be really cautious about, is that the price of these schools goes up every single year. And you're also, unless you have savings or you have other support, going to need to factor in the cost of living, which is pretty substantial over 3 years.
And interest
Yes.
rates are going up.
Yes. And probably, this is getting into policy speculation, but I believe that the student loan pause will probably end soon, which means that your loans will be accruing interest that'll capitalize the day you graduate. And so when we're looking at six figures, that's also something kind of serious to think about.
Oh, yeah. You could easily graduate with $300,000 of debt from any of these schools. Even if you're there on a full ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of schools now that have it's a full tuition scholarship, and then you just have to pay $1,500 a semester in fees.
And support yourself while not working.
And living expenses, food and rent and whatever. And so it's like, well, wait a second now. First of all, you're charging, I don't know, why are fees separate from tuition? That's just like a total scam. That's like such
Yeah.
bullshit. That like, some schools, I was looking the other day, some schools have like $75. Their fees are like $75. And then other schools have like $1,500 is their fees. And it's like, well, wait, what? What is this for? How's that separate from the tuition? What are you doing? And it's like, it's all just bullshit, right? Um, anyway, you can definitely go on a full ride and still graduate with 6 figures of debt if you're not
Definitely.
careful.
If you're living in New York City, the schools publish their budgets for cost of living, and this is all things you can look up, but it's about $30,000 a year. And so there you go. So
Yeah, easily. When by the time you factor in living expenses, you go buy yourself a fancy suit because you have to go to on-campus interviewing. People, it's too easy to borrow money. Like they just really let you borrow a lot of money while you're in school. They jack up the like estimated living expenses so that you can just borrow as much as you can. And some students are just like, yeah, I mean, I think most students probably are like, yep, put me down for the max. Just send me the max. I want the most free money I can get. Well, it's not free money, and it's going to start accruing interest, and you're going to end up graduating with this wild amount of debt. Anyway, yes, I think the answer, Ruth, you are correct. The answer is always going to be, it depends. My advice, I would always as well tell Pedro, hey, cross that bridge when you come to it. I mean, we can certainly talk about this in hypothetical terms, but you're going to have to make this decision for yourself once you actually have these, excuse me, offers on the table. And I don't know that the offer really is going to be a full ride at Chicago and pay full price for Harvard. Maybe it is for Pedro, but we don't really know. It's real hard to just kind of say in this vacuum. Let's back up a little bit, Ruth. You were a student of the LSAT demon. You ended up working your way up to an LSAT in the high 170s.
I scored a 177.
177 on the official test. You applied. Did you like follow all of our advice? Apply early, apply broadly, apply with your best LSAT score?
I applied a little bit later than recommended, but other than
Okay.
that, I did apply broadly and with my best LSAT.
Okay. How many schools did you apply to?
10.
10 schools? Yeah. That's so some people are going to be like, well, that's contrary to Nathan and Ben's advice. Not really when you're a candidate like Ruth. Ruth has a 177 and good grades.
Yeah, I had good grades. I had a
Yeah.
388.
So good grades and a 177. At that point, you can kind of narrow your list a little bit. Like she had good reason to believe that she was going to get into the top schools. So then there's no point in like fishing for schools down at the lower levels. I assume you applied mostly to schools that are like top 14-ish.
It was mostly those top schools. And I had a couple schools I also applied to in the New York area, which is where I live and where I kind of hope to practice.
Yeah.
So that was also part of the plan.
Yeah. And okay, so you have made your final decision. You're going to Yale.
I have committed. I will be attending Yale in the fall.
You're going to Yale this fall. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nobody deserves it more than you. How did you make that? What, if you don't mind sharing, like, what was your best other offer? Like, what were you really thinking about?
Sure. So I was actually in this very close to the decision. I got what's called the Rubenstein Scholarship at Chicago, which is a full ride and it includes a stipend. So that's an actual debt-free degree. And I considered it very, very seriously because Chicago has a really great reputation. It seemed like there was a lot of things about it that were appealing to me. And obviously, the money is a really huge deal. So you want to make sure when or if, Pedro, you're in this kind of situation, that you consider that with a certain degree of seriousness. I think the reason I ultimately decided on Yale was that when I was going into this process, that was my goal, was to hopefully be able to attend there. And I had a very specific set of goals that I hope to accomplish when I graduate, including federal clerkships and all of these things, right? So I was considering that when I was making my decision. And another thing I was considering was, what is my actual student experience going to look like? Yale is in my hometown. I'm from New Haven, Connecticut. This is an environment in which I felt really immediately comfortable when I went to the admitted students day. It was a lot of these sort of softer factors. And I did also consider how much am I personally, given the amount of aid that the school gave me and my other resources going to have to put down. And I decided, to me, it's worth it. I think that there is something I'm going to be getting from this experience. But it was not an easy decision. And it's not something that is, I think, can be made automatically just purely on the merits of this scholarship versus what a Yale degree does. It's very dependent on who you are as a person, what you hope to do in your career, and some other personal factors. So
Yeah. So it's mid-April. You just, as we record this, you just made the decision recently?
Last week. Yeah.
Last week. Okay. So were you able to see like all the numbers before you made your decision?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. You saw the full package from Yale. You saw the full package from Chicago. You're like just in a spreadsheet, like actually comparing the numbers to each other.
Exactly.
Cool. Anything else you want to, any other additional advice for Pedro?
I don't think so. I think I wish Pedro all the best. And I really feel like in this type of situation, this is something I heard from a lot of people. You can't truly go wrong. I think that's true. If you know your why of why you're going to law school and you have things that you want to accomplish, be confident in the decision that you make, and you will definitely be able to have a great career in both places.
I agree. You can't, it's hard to go wrong at the top levels though. We're talking about the top levels. It's hard to go wrong. It's easy to go wrong everywhere else. So be careful. Like really, because like the thing is slippery slope arguments are kind of inherently dumb, but I'm going to make one anyway. Because it's like, as soon as people are like, well, I mean, you said it was okay to pay for Yale and turn down a full ride plus stipend to Chicago. So then why can't I pay for Chicago and turn down a full ride plus stipend at Columbia? And then if I say that's okay, then they'd make the same argument like a couple steps down the line. And the next thing you know, they're like paying full price at, I don't know, like some school that's just like, yeah, it's okay. It's fine, but it's not like special, And I mean, you can't argue against like Yale is special. It is unique and something different. And so you're going to ultimately have to make that decision for yourself, whether it's worth it for you. Pedro, I would though strongly encourage you to at least apply to these schools, right? Do you agree, Ruth?
I agree. I totally agree. You might be surprised by the aid offering as well. So give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah, don't shut the door on yourself. I mean, like if you're a credible candidate to get into Harvard and Yale, like don't be lazy about it. Like go ahead and put the work. It's going to take some work, It's like not easy to apply to those schools, right? You have to do some extra shit probably.
Harvard, or for Yale anyway? Yes. For Yale, yes.
One essay? Is that all it was? One essay?
Yeah, it's 250 words. So it's short, but actually it being short makes it a bit more challenging, probably. You want to get all of your ideas into the most brief form possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, lawyers, like, you should not be afraid of any amount of work, really, to be honest. I mean, you should never be like, oh, that's too much work, I don't want to do it. The lawyers do all of the work all the time. So, yeah, but go ahead and put those applications in if you're a reasonable candidate for those schools. And then you can cross that bridge when you come to it. And if you actually end up in that spot where you're making that very difficult decision, it's a good problem to have at that point. And then it's going to be real hard to make a mistake.
Totally agree.
All right. You want to wrap it up there?
Sure thing. Thanks so much for writing in, Pedro. And if anyone else has any questions, please email daily@lsatdemon.com to ask questions or share LSAT or law school admissions news. Thank you for listening.